Hello everyone. I have received a few questions regarding how to set up the hierarchy or the parenting for the layers within Animate based on what we saw in the last class. So I thought I'd put together this short video to showcase how that is done. So what we did in class is I gave you guys this file, which is an Illustrator file, and it contains a series of layers that have been properly labeled so that when I import them into Animate, they will retain that naming convention, helping me identify what is what within my character. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to jump into Animate. I'm going to create a new project, and here I am going to import into the main timeline. I am going to import by pressing Control R or Command R. I'm going to import that Illustrator file, the WalkCycle. So with that done, notice that it's telling me, okay, you're about to import artboard 1, and it recognizes each one of the layers, and it gives me the options at the bottom to choose what to do with those layers when I'm importing them. I will retain them as Animate layers so that each layer in Illustrator matches that one in the Animate environment. And with that done, I'll go ahead and click Import, and you'll see that we get all of the different layers that I have provided to you. Now the bottommost layer is the guide layer, and that's the one that has the WalkCycle template, so that we can start training our eyes on what the different positions within the WalkCycle should be. So I'm going to show you first and foremost how to set up the work environment, and then we'll go ahead and start animating. So first things first, as I imported everything, each one of these items needs to be turned into a symbol so that I can go ahead and create either classic tweening or motion tweening to animate them in here, and also so that I can relocate their anchor point so that way they work just as a puppet would in character animation. So with that done, what I'm going to do is I am going to select each one of those items by selecting on their respective keyframes here, and I'm going to press F8 on the keyboard, and I'm going to name each one of them according to the name of their layer. So in this case, this would be the front hand, and I'll keep it as a graphic since there's not going to be any animation inside it, and a graphic would work just fine. I'll click OK, and I'll continue with each one of these. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over the naming for now so that we can move a little faster. So F8, boom. 1 second, let's see, there we go. So like that. And this, you should name your symbols as I explained in class, because if eventually we want to control these either via code on the timeline or an AS file, then we'll go ahead and we make use of that naming convention to properly call the movie clips or the graphics from the actual code. So it is necessary in our case because I am simply showing how to set this up. I call each one of them a symbol, and we should be okay for this animation. So with that done, I'm going to select these layers for the lower back, and I am going to change their layer style brightness to -20 so that they're a little darker to indicate that they're behind. And I'm going to do the same thing for the back arm so that I can at a glance notice what's behind in the body and what's in front. So this is my front arm, this is my front leg, this would be my back leg, and this would be my back arm. And that matches my template for the guide. With that done, I'm going to select that guide, and that symbol's color effects, I'm going to turn alpha to 40% so that it becomes semi-transparent. I'm going to place it at the top of the stack, and I'm going to lock it. The reason why I lock it for now is that at every time I'm going to create animation, I will be unlocking it, shifting that to the left so that each one of the drawings matches the position of my character. And that way I can go ahead and save me a lot of time of setting up keyframes. So what I'm going to do is, now that the first position seems to be okay, I am going to create a set of new keyframes around frame 3, I'm sorry. I'm going to press F6 once I've highlighted that frame 3, and I'm going to press F6 to create a copy of the keyframe. Before I do that, I am sorry. Let me undo that really quick. I am going to set up the actual, let me lock that guide layer, and I'm going to set up the actual anchor point of each one of the layers. So for the let's start in order. So for the front hand, this anchor point would be around where the wrist is. Now notice that I am using my free transform tool to do this. So as I go through each layer, I can go ahead and relocate the position to where I think that anchor should be based on the anatomy of the character. Now it's best to do this while we're looking at the character in wireframe form, and I do that by clicking on this little icon right here next to the eye so that I can see clearly where in my wireframe that anchor point will be. Makes it a little easier for me to identify the positioning of the anchor point, and is less busy because I don't have all the fills blocking my view. So I'm going to do this really quick and come back to actually creating the keyframing. That's the pelvis, and it goes around the belly button. This one goes on the where the leg connects with the pelvis. Same thing for this other leg. This would be on the knee, and this foot would be around the ankle. Same thing for this one, and lower leg. And just a quick check to make sure that I got all of them. I sure did. Now, with that done, what I want to do is I want to parent. I want to create parenting on all these layers. And by that I mean take a look at what you have in front of you and determine what controls what. And as I explained in class, for character animation, the torso controls pretty much the movement of the entire body. So that would be the parent to every layer. So with that in mind, let's start parenting these things in reverse. So we're going to put children to parents. So we'll start with the hands. So with this front hand, in order to be able to activate that parenting, I am going to click on this icon right here, which is called the Show Parenting View. That opens up that window so that I can see all the layers and how to connect them. My front hand is a child of my forearm, which is right here. So I'm going to click on the little icon and drag a line to my forearm layer down here, and that creates that connection. Then my forearm is a child of my upper arm, and that creates that connection. You can also do this by clicking on the little icon next to the icon, and you see a flyout menu, and choose what layer that would be a child of. So my upper arm in this case is a child of the torso. So now it's connected to the torso. It's a choice on how you connect them. So for the front foot, that's a child of the lower leg, which is a child of the upper leg, which is a child of the pelvis, which is a child of my torso. And for the back hand, child of the forearm, of the back forearm, child of the upper arm, child of the torso. Back foot, child of the lower leg, child of the upper leg, child of the pelvis, child of the torso. The head is a child of the neck is a child of the torso, and my parenting has been set up. This is my hierarchy. So now when I select my torso, if I move the torso, the entire body moves along with everything else. If I select my head, which is the last child of the neck, that moves separate from the neck. But if I select the neck and I move the neck, sorry about that, if I select the neck, it's a bit difficult, there we go, then I'm selecting the torso. If I select the neck, only the head and the neck move. So let me undo that, and let's get going with the animation. So to do this, what I want to do is I want to bring up my guide again. So I'm going to turn on its visibility, and I'm going to unlock it. I'm going to go to about frame 3, drag a selection across all the frames, and I'm going to press F6 to create a keyframe. Now with that new keyframe, I am going to deselect everything by clicking on the empty area. I'm going to select the guide only, and I'm going to press Shift and start moving it to the left. Now what I'm doing here is I'm constraining by pressing Shift, I'm constraining the position, the X position of that guide, so that it matches the position of all the characters on my drawing. And if you notice, what I'm trying to do now is match the position of the head to the previous position of this frame. You see, you get a ghost image that helps you actually see, almost like onion skinning. So you'll see that you have that as a guide. With that done, I go back to locking my guide layer, and then I'll start by moving the torso. I'll bring the torso down to match the position of the torso, And I will bring my back upper arm. I'll rotate it slightly to match the rotation of the other one. If I'm getting picky, I can go ahead and rotate my hand as well, or rotate my forearm to give that more of a matching position. My forearm in the front, my back upper arm in the front, sorry, my upper arm, it goes up slightly, then the forearm in that area will go down slightly. This leg, my back leg, gets moved up a bit. My lower leg gets rotated slightly, and my foot goes slightly up. Okay, I can play around with the position settings for these things until I match my guide, and you can get as detailed as you want. The more time you spend playing with this, the more your animation will look fluid. Now that that frame is done, I proceed to go to frame 5 here on the timeline, press F6 so that I set up a keyframe on that frame, deselect the layer, the guide layer, select it, unlock it, select it, and then slide it again to the left, lock it again so that I don't select it, and then proceed to match the position of the different items to those in the guide drawing. So torso goes up, and you probably notice that I'm trying to match both the torso and the bottom part of the head. So that makes my motion a little easier. Let me move this upper hand back like so, and my forearm for that slightly this way. My front foot gets pushed forward. Here we go. And lower leg gets rotated slightly. My back leg, my back upper leg gets pushed back slightly, repositioned. Lower leg gets stretched out. So it's almost like my foot starting to go straight in the back. Lower leg, let me move it back so that we can match my position, and that gives me that position. Then I proceed again to unlock the layer, go to frame 7 this time, F7, sorry, 7, F6 to create a new set of keyframes on frame 7, F6, slide the guide only, lock it, and again repeat. Torso goes up slightly. So as you can see, this is a lengthy process, but so is animation basically. And you proceed to start placing the different items that you're animating one by one in their respective positions so that you get the proper matching to the drawing that we're working with. So let me rotate that slightly to match that leg in the back. Lower leg gets rotated slightly to make that leg straight. And foot goes flat on the floor. And you'll notice that that's a lot shorter than the actual drawing. And that's okay. You can actually, if you want to get really detailed, you could, actually stretch the leg, and we'll do that in just a second just to show you an example of what that looks like. So we'll go ahead and position that upper leg for the front leg right there, and let's rotate my front arm so slightly, back arm, rotate it so that the showing up here. And so with that done, let's just go ahead and work on these frames that I've just created. So if I want to check what I've done so far, I can always create my loop, turn off the visibility on my guide, and see how this is working. And as you can see, I have issues with my back arm, so I need to go back and review each one of the keyframes to make sure that I'm actually moving the back arm properly. And I can see that on this frame, I did move it. So I need to rotate that. And so now I can see that my animation is actually matching a bit better. Okay, and so now you could, after doing this, you basically are going to complete the entire walk cycle. And to add speed or to slow down the animation, you're going to go ahead and add tween frames. So I'll select frame 2 in this case and press F5 a couple of times to add frames there. Then I'll press in between the next two keyframes, in between the next two keyframes. And then all we have done after that is once I turn off I don't need to animate the guide layer. I'll go ahead and select all of the different layers and right click, create classic tween, and let's take a look to see what this animation is looking like. So it's looking pretty smooth, as you can see now. My head needs to bubble a little bit per the principles of animation that I told you to do a bit of research on. But that is how you get parenting set up, and this is how you set up the initial animation for your walk cycle. Now, this is just based on the guide that I provided to you in class. So this is based on this guide, and this is just one of many ways of animating. So if you do a quick search online, or if you have an animation book from your previous classes, you can go ahead and pick one of those. And it's a good point to start matching your keyframing from traditional hand-drawn animation onto moving layers into Animate. I hope this helps.